Hey everyone, and Tony here with yet another review of one of the first Nicktoons to ever air on Nickelodeon, Ren and Stimpy, which had its premiere on August 11th, 1991, just like with Rugrats and Doug, and ended its run on December 18th, 1995, and was created by John Crispolucci. Now, what really made Ren and Stimpy such a standout and very groundbreaking for a lot of the Nicktoons for the time? First of all, it was its usage of off-color humor, slapstick humor, gross-out jokes, and a lot of humor involving like bodily functions and even bodily movements. It was basically the type of humor that was very innovative for its time and really made Nickelodeon stand out as a network. And pretty much this was also a reason what made the show stand out as well. And the fact that it managed to take its cues from a lot of older cartoons like the Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, and even to a lot of the older Disney cartoons like Mickey Mouse, Goofy, and Donald Duck. And that's what really made it stand out. And the fact that a lot of kids watched it at the time and even grew up with this show and look back at it with fond memories really goes to show you how much of a strong legacy this show has. Not to mention, this show was a source of inspiration for other shows to come. Like in Nickelodeon's case, you've had shows like Rocko's Modern Life, Ah Real Monsters, SpongeBob SquarePants, Angry Beavers, Invader Zim, Cat Scratch, and to some extent, the Brothers Flub and But Ugly Martians. And then outside Nickelodeon, you've had this show inspire the likes of the Schnookums and Meat Show, Timon and Pumbaa, Cow and Chicken, Adventure Time, Regular Show, The Amazing World of Gumball, Dexter's Laboratory, and even Courage the Cowardly Dog. So Ren and Stimpy was very innovative for its time because of its usage of different styles of humor and mostly emphasizing on a lot of the gross-out humor. I mean, not a lot of cartoons, even at the time, would even dare show, like, grotesque close-ups of, well, like, hair or sweat or zits or all that type of stuff. And at times it looked very discomforting, but it looked kind of enchanting the same way because that was part of the charm of this show. It managed to balance its off-kilter humor with a lot of charm and wit and even clever pop culture references. In fact, you could really tell that there were a lot of pop culture references that were like thrown into the show, especially when it involved like a lot of their predecessors in terms of its cartoons. Like for example, in Stimpy's Big Break, you have a scene in which Muddy Mud Skipper is playing Ranger Smith, and then Stimpy playing Yogi Bear. And Muddy Mud Skipper like states to Stimpy, "Hey, don't you remember your lines?" And Stimpy then proceeds to like splurt other lines from other cartoons, most especially the likes of the Mr. Jinx and Pixie and Dixie show, in which he says, well, something about Mises, and I thought it was just, okay, that is Mr. Jinx and Pixie and Dixie, because Mr. Jinx says that as well. So you could really tell that this show took a lot of inspiration from the likes of Tom and Jerry in terms of its cartoon violence, the Looney Tunes in terms of its pop culture references, and managed to really give it its own grotesque spin when it came to its gross-out humor. So in essence, Ren and Stimpy was a very groundbreaking Nicktoon that really set the standards for a lot of cartoons to follow at the time. And here's the age-old question. How well does this show hold up to this very day? Did it age well, or did it not age so gracefully? Let's find out. Now, in terms of its story, each episode goes like this. Ren and Stimpy go on some bizarre adventure. They go through a lot of bizarre findings, and along the way, a lot of gross-out jokes are thrown in the mix. A lot of fart jokes, especially, and a lot of BO jokes that are thrown into the mix as well. And the adventures that these two get themselves into are extremely bizarre and manage to be very creative, yet very irreverent. And that's what really makes each of the stories of this show rather enthralling and rather exciting as well, because there's never a dull moment. There's never a dull moment in which you, think to yourself, man, this is boring. But you just feel rather excited at even the thoughts of these two getting themselves into such hijinks and with such shenanigans that you think, oh my goodness, it's rather weird and it's rather crazy that they get themselves into. I mean, you've had one episode in which Ren and Stimpy are space cadets. You've had a couple of episodes in which they try to pass themselves off as house pets. You've had Ren and Stimpy in the pound. You've had an episode in which Ren and Stimpy saw off the statue of Abe Lincoln's head in order to reveal that instead of the treasure found in its head, it's actually caramel candied corn, and it's like Ren is rather disappointed with it, but Stimpy doesn't really mind. And a lot of other bizarre happenings go on in this show, especially when Stimpy tells about the nerve ending fairy, or even with Stimpy's fairy tales. I thought it was just hilarious. I thought it was just hilarious in its own way. So it's no wonder that these stories really hold up to this very day, because not only does it make a great use of its gross out jokes really well, but it manages to balance it out with a lot of clever pop culture references and a lot of wit as well. And not to mention a lot of charm that really makes this show naturally funny. So overall, the story does hold up to this very day, and I still rewatch these episodes with a huge twisted smile on my face. And then we have the animation, which is very creative and very much off the wall, and well, it basically makes great use of what the bizarre setting this world has gotten itself into. Like, for example, there are moments in which you have a lot of these grotesque close-ups, especially involving the episode I Was a Teenage Stimpy, in which you have a close-up of Stimpy's face and you see that there is a lot of facial hair and sweat and zits and all that type of stuff, and it looks pretty disgusting. I mean, and especially with the use of a lot of the grotesque moments, do you feel genuinely scared, yet totally enthralled? And especially when it came to the what the hell moments, like Ren's Lady Macbeth-like rant in Stimpy's fan club, you could really see that the people behind this episode, or even the show in general, really went out of their way to really make the animation burst. I mean, it can really show just how creative and just how innovative these people were when it came to how they animated each and every character in Ren and Stimpy. And it really shows just how off the wall and just how off kilter they can really be, and how well they use it, and how they mastered the usage of such off kilter animation, but still managed to be very enthralling and very engaging even to this very day. And even the off-kilter character designs can even leave something to write home about, as it really stands out from the rest of the competition. And that's what really makes Ren and Stimpy very strong in its animation. Its grotesque uses of a lot of the close-ups, and especially when it came to the character designs as well, looking rather interesting yet very colorful. It's no wonder that the animation is still something to even behold to this very day. The music is yet another highlight of this show. I mean, you have the extremely catchy opening with such great uses with the guitars and even the bongos, and that's what really makes it a very simple yet very effective opening, because, well, when you think about it, less is more, especially when you have a lot of guitars really getting you into the mood of this show. especially with the likes of the bongos, you could really tell that you're going to get yourself into a very weird yet very enthralling type of show. The ending manages to make more use of its instrumentation with more strings, or excuse me, guitars and percussion, and it manages to be very, very fun and very engaging, and it just leaves you with a huge smile on my face. And especially when you go to the show's main episodes, now you could really tell that there was a great range of music being used. With the classical music, you've had compositions by the likes of Mozart, Handel, Schubert, Bach, Schumann, Mendelssohn, von Weber, Donizetti, Rossini, Verdi, Bellini, Delibes, Massenet, Debussy, Tchaikovsky, Mussorgsky, Khachurian, Rimsky-Korsakov, and many, many, many other prominent composers at the time. You could really tell that their music was being used to such a twisted sense of perfection that really makes me enjoy the show even more, because what more can you expect? I'm a huge music nut. This show manages to make a great use of its music, especially when it came to a lot of the classical compositions, but it also makes great use of other types of music as well, like jazz and even a lot of the indie music as well, and not to mention blues and even a lot of, well, a tinge of rock music as well. But it mostly uses the likes of classical, jazz, rhythm and blues, and indie music to really make this show really stand out. So yet another standout of the show is, the music, because it's very diverse, it's very interesting, and it just leaves you so excited for what's going to happen with the show. And there is never, ever a dull moment, or never a moment in which any type of music feels like it's stuck out like a sore thumb. Then we get to the characters, which are probably safe to say the most colorful ones that I've seen, and they're basically also trendsetters as well. Let's start off with Ren Hoek. Yes, Ren does have a lot of negative qualities to his character. He's mean, he's brash, he's loud, he's obnoxious, he's someone who has a lot of these unpredictable mood swings. He loses his mind. He constantly snaps. He has a tendency to lash out at others, especially to his only friend, Stimpy. He verbally abuses him and, well, physically abuses him as well. Usually, it's supposed to hate this character, but there are times in which, his charm and his sense of wit and intelligence make me not hate this character entirely. But my goodness, every time he snaps, there are moments in which, well, you might have to make a run for it, because when he snaps, it just shows you that he's a force to be reckoned with, and he's definitely someone that you do not want to mess with for your entire life, and God forbid they ever got on his bad side, and God forbid that anybody would want to see him snap and just enjoy it. Sometimes with Ren's, well, insane little episodes, it really shows you that at times he's not going to be all there. He's basically like the successor to the likes of Donald Duck and even the likes of Clint Clobber, but with Ren, oh my goodness, is he 10 times more chaotic than Donald Duck and Daffy Duck combined. This character is so psychotic, so manic, and so out there, but at times he's also quite witty and charming as well. Though don't expect him to be constantly nice forever, because he only is nice for a very few moments as well. And especially when he goes into his psychotic rants, and even when he goes out of his way and strangles or punches Stimpy, you could see that there's a huge burst of color, which is yet another highlight of the animation. Its off-kilter animation style really do highlight how much Ren is feeling at this moment, or even how angry Ren is at the moment as well. So the off kilter color style really do like burst into the screen and make you like feel enthralled at Ren's psychotic nature, so to say. But at the same time, you even want to tell yourself, okay, he's not someone I want to have a friendly chat with every day. But still, he can be enthralling, but just don't expect him to be extremely likable because Ren, he's far from likable, but at the same time he's kind of magnetic in terms of his personality. Now, when it comes to Stimpy, he is the complete opposite. Now, while Ren is very well known for being psychotic and manic and at times like displays a lot of intelligence and class, Stimpy is extremely simple-minded. He is he has a tendency to be extremely childish and kind of annoying, but actually really charming as well and really sweet. And he's also proven himself to be quite the inventor and quite intelligent as well. Oh, sure, Stimpy does screw up, and even though he does, he still manages to take a huge beating from Ren. And the fact that Stimpy manages to really endure every type of beating and every type of, well, physical and verbal abuse that Ren dishes out on him really shows you how much of a hidden badass he really is. He's definitely one of the tropes that TV tropes likes to call, well, crouching moron, hidden badass, in which, yes, Stimpy does display a lot of stupidity and a lot of simple-mindedness as well, as opposed to Ren's constantly manic yet somehow straight man-like persona. But even then, Stimpy does manage to take a huge beating from Ren, and, well, even despite all that, he still manages to stay in one shape. In fact, this is definitely the hugest highlight of the show, to see such interesting character dynamics between Ren's manic behavior and Stimpy's simple-minded behavior, almost like their predecessors. For example, you've had the likes of Rocky and Muggsy from the Looney Tunes shorts, especially the likes of Tom and Jerry, and what do you call this? Especially the likes of George Milton and Lenny Small from Of Mice and Men. Those type of relationships definitely make us remind us of Ren and Stimpy's character dynamics, and it's also another reason what really makes this show also stand out. The buddy comedy between those two is extremely well done and extremely memorable. That, yes, there were other characters that also got that formula as well. And with Rocko's Modern Life, yes, you've had three best friends in the form of Rocko, Heifer, and Filbert. And then with Cow and Chicken, you get the main characters, Cow and Chicken. With Schnookums and Meat, you also get Schnookums and Meat. With Timon and Pumbaa, yes, they were also like Ren and Stimpy as well in terms of their execution, especially the likes of Finn and Jake and Mordecai and Rigby. You could really tell that a lot of the classic cartoon duos were also influencing themselves on Ren and Ren and Stimpy managed to influence the other cartoon duos of the 90s and especially of the early 2000s, especially to the 2010s. So the fact that these two managed to really stay relevant in terms of like really working off of each other is definitely such a huge standout for me. And then you have other characters as well, like the Powdered Toast Man, who is a superhero parody whose, well, basic powers include super strength and flatulence. Then you have Mr. Horse, a no-nonsense talking horse who is very well known for appearing in Stimpy's kitty litter commercial. Then you have Muddy Mudskipper, who is an homage to a lot of the old jaded comedians who are looking looking back at their former glories and realize now that they're pretty much washed up. And then you have a lot of these characters known as the lummoxes, which are these obese and, well, type of people, usually men and at times women, who don't really say much and at times, well, are pretty much known to be quite the bruisers as well. So overall, the characters found in Ren and Stimpy are probably some of the most colorful that I've ever seen. Not to mention the voice work. In seasons 1 and 3, you've had the likes of John Cristofoulusi voicing Ren, but after Cristofoulusi ended up getting fired, he was then replaced by Billy West. Now, interestingly enough, Billy West wanted to voice Ren since before the very beginning of the show, but then John Cristofoulusi decided to cast him as Stimpy and probably a lot of the other main characters as well. But he ended up being Stimpy as well. And I thought that Billy West managed to really give such a sweet and innocent nature to Stimpy, and a very enjoyable one at that as well. Which is no surprise because this is also one of the roles that has also made him a household name in Nickelodeon, the other one being Doug. With John Cristofoulusi, he managed to give Ren his very Peter Lorre type of accent and manages to really give Ren his bombastic nature, which really makes him such a joy. Of course, even after Billy West replaced John Cristofoulusi, he did have his own take on Ren, but it's still a very great portrayal. But ultimately, when it comes to portraying Ren, John Cristofoulusi and Billy West are pretty much on par with each other. They each give their own nuances, and they even give their own, well, feelings for each of the character. But with Billy West's Stimpy, it's definitely one of my most favorite. And then you even have other voice actors and voice actresses as well. Even actors and actresses as well. Like, for example, you've had Dom DeLuise. You've had Rosie O'Donnell. Heck, even Cheryl Chase appeared in this cartoon, as a lot of the various different characters usually found as like one of the girls that Stimpy talks to, or even a little girl from Pet House Blues, and well, that's just pretty much it. There's a great use of voice actors and voice actresses that were in this show. Aside from Billy and West, like I said, there was also Billy West and John Cristofoulusi. There was also Cheryl Chase, Dom DeLuise, Rosie O'Donnell, and many, many others that found themselves voicing these very iconic characters. So before I get to my conclusions, I'd like to also mention that there was also some backstage drama involving the show. Originally, Ren and Stimpy was produced by Spoonco, which basically were running from seasons 1 to 3. But after John Cristofoulusi ended up getting fired, it ended up going to Games Animation. And at times, a lot of people felt that they loved the Spoonco era Ren and Stimpy a lot more so than the Games Animation, because with the Spoonco era, they basically got away with a lot of things a lot more, and it was also a lot more irreverent, whereas with the Games Animation version, it kind of was a little bit more PC, so to say. But it's safe to say that no matter which I prefer, I still think that Ren and Stimpy was definitely and will be a very enjoyable Nicktoon that will always be remembered to this very day. It has excellent gross-out humor, glorious use of pop culture references, and very great character dynamics between our title heroes. And it's pretty much found itself to be one of the founding fathers when it came to buddy comedies in cartoons from the 90s, and even with gross-out animation. So with that, I give Ren and Stimpy a well-deserved 5 out of 5. It's highly recommendable. It's found itself in Nickelodeon's history to be one of its most prominent Nicktoons of all time, and was a founding father, and has managed to place itself in history books as, well, the one that started the trend of Nicktoons. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in later where I discuss my top 25 favorite Ren and Stimpy episodes. So until then, see you later, everybody.